welcome back to World Crisis Radio. One last note about the Japanese crisis. Every system of power generation has cost. Every form of human society has cost. There's no way around it. If you look at coal, let's look at the situation of coal mines in China. China has between 2,000 or 3,000 people who get killed every year in coal mining accidents, and we've had those in West Virginia and Kentucky. So coal poses that problem. Oil poses the problem of wars in the Middle East and other issues, as well as the issues that are pointed up by oil spills and other things, which are exaggerated, but they're also quite real. All in all, considering all of the variations, a modern nuclear reactor remains your best bet. A high-temperature, fourth-generation, pebble-bed, state-of-the-art nuclear reactor is the answer. The idea that you can say that the relic like the General Electric Mark I, a first-generation relic, is somehow typical of nuclear reactors, this is simply wrong. So face the fact that any system you choose is going to have cost. In terms of wind and solar, these are a bad joke. The more of those you build, the greater your energy deficit will be. The average wind farm takes more energy to build than it's ever going to produce in its entire life, as far as we can tell. And it is incapable of handling a baseline demand of a modern industrial economy. If you refuse to have a modern industrial economy, you're therefore condemning a large portion of the population to being superfluous and therefore being eliminated. So face the real-world alternatives, and you will see that modernization, rather than obsolescence, and investment, rather than penny-pinching, is the answer. Now, concerning U.S. domestic, we want to salute the 150 to 160,000 people who came to Madison, Wisconsin last Saturday. We're hoping that a large crowd will also come to the White House on Saturday, the 19th of March. The first hours in which this program is going to be on the air coincide with the beginning of that demonstration, so we don't know what that turnout is going to be. But if you look at the Veterans for Peace or the Answer Coalition or a bunch of other groups, you can find lists of demonstrations which happen to regard the 8th anniversary of the Iraq War, but given the way that imperialism is working these days, we've got so many wars that it happens to coincide now with the beginning of the presumed attack on Libya. So good time to turn out. But let's look at the economic side of this. The reactionary Republicans are attacking in Wisconsin. In Ohio, we have Governor Kasich, who has attempted to sell his genocidal austerity policies as a good thing for the country. Frank Luntz has focused on Ohio. If Kasich can be defeated in Ohio, we would say from our point of view, it means that the entire reactionary Republican coalition is in trouble. The case that we'd like to highlight this week is Michigan. This now shows you the full extent, the full fury of the Republican austerity onslaught. And I think this is important because it shows that there is no sacrosanct ban on tax increases by the Republicans. We're looking here at Republican Governor Rick Snyder of Michigan, and he is proposing a series of amazing austerity measures. This takes us back to Chancellor Heinrich Brüning in Germany between 1930 and 1932. In some ways, it takes us back to von Papen in 1932 with the coup d'etat angle being brought in. Here's what Snyder is doing. Snyder is raising taxes. Yeah, a Republican governor is raising taxes big time. Mark this, because this shows you what Boehner, what Walker and others are going to do when they've destroyed the opposition and they feel that they have the upper hand. Snyder is raising taxes on who? On senior citizens and the poor. The methodology of Snyder is to gouge $1.7 billion out of senior citizens and the poor in Michigan. And to do what with that? To give it to corporations and banks as corporate welfare. It's an amazing symmetry. $1.7 billion gouged out of the hides of senior citizens and the poor, and $1.8 billion in corporate tax giveaways, corporate welfare, and related stuff given to the corporations. This is the essence of it. It means cuts in services, the destruction of the social safety net, and tax increases at the same time. This is the full, burning deflationary program. This is acute deflationary politics. Of course, it's guaranteed to increase the budget deficit the next time around. It's also guaranteed to destroy human life. There's also a kind of, I call it a mini coup commission. The idea is that Snyder says if a municipality, the city of Detroit or Flint or Dearborn or Ann Arbor, any of these places that are in financial trouble, he can appoint what amounts to a commissar, and the commissar can go in to that city or town or county, take them over, and then really rule by decree, a kind of a mini dictator. A mini dictator can go in there and rule by decree and break all contracts, including break all labor contracts. If you find that you've got a bankrupt town or city, you can come in and simply break the contract with the teachers union, the firemen, the police, the nurses, the sanitation men, the people who assure the fabric of civilization. Now, this reminds us of von Papen. Von Papen in Germany in 1932 as the chancellor presided over a coup d'etat in Prussia, the largest subdivision of Germany at that time. What Snyder is doing, he's now got a path to seize control of Detroit and other cities and run them into the ground with this austerity doctrine. This is purely ideological. It is purely insane. We have a depression. The Republican ideology is incapable of grasping the fact that this is a depression, right? They simply say, well, spending is too high. Unfortunately, it's not so simple. The complex phenomenon of the depression includes a number of aspects. We have very high unemployment. We have 25% unemployment. Is that a problem? Should that be addressed? When they're running for office, they say jobs, jobs, jobs. But now that they're in power, they say deficits, deficits, debt, debt, debt. Forget about jobs. So be it, says Boehner. He's willing to destroy 700,000 jobs on the way to cutting the social safety net. We have a falling standard of living. Is that an issue? We have declining economic growth. Is that an issue? But inside the private sector, you have all kinds of problems, and then you have problems in the government sector. The government sector problems are largely created by the collapse of the private sector and the increasing social costs of unemployment insurance and related things that are then shifted onto government. The Republicans fixate only on the debt. They don't care about the unemployment. They don't care about economic growth. They claim that it will somehow magically be restored. No evidence of that. The falling standard of living and everything else. So we propose here to address the depression as a whole, and you can't do this by picking out one symptom, say a deficit or a public debt. You can't pick one symptom and say that's the key to everything. You've got to approach this across the board, and ultimately, if there is one key, it is the manufacturing of capital goods and the question of infrastructure, which go together because capital goods are part of infrastructure, right? You want to build a railroad, you've got to have capital goods. The locomotives on your fast rail or your maglev are the essence of capital goods. So we have to approach this by causes, not by the symptoms. And, of course, the Republican answer to this is purely demagogical. It's purely ideological. In Ohio, the most recent poll shows that 60% of Ohio voters support the cause of the unions. In other words, that they should be allowed to exist at least. 37% support the reactionary Kasich, who was a very, very nasty reactionary. He was one of the people who led the rebellion against Bush the Elder when he broke his read my lips, no new taxes pledge. I'll tell the story about that another time. Remember that the other thing about these austerity policies, they are destined to fail. The more you cut the budget this year, the bigger your deficit will be next year. That's the death spiral of Weimar. That is not where we want to take the United States. So it's time now to defeat the reactionaries in Ohio, Wisconsin, other states, and in Michigan, where this has gone way too far. So keep up at Tarpley.net, keep up on the Webster G. Tarpley Twitter, and we'll see you next week here on World Crisis Radio.